So you're looking for auto insurance and you're asking yourself, what's the bare minimum that I have to have according to New York State rules? It's pretty simple. New York State requires you to carry bodily injury liability limits of $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident, and $10,000 in property damage. You're also required to carry uninsured motorist coverage, $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident, and $50,000 in personal injury protection. The first part's very simple, the liability to others. That limit has remained about the same for the past 20 years, despite the fact that a new car on average costs approximately $50,000, minimum is $10,000. Likewise, medical expenses has increased quite a bit as well in the past 20 years. You see your healthcare premiums, you know what I mean. Then for uninsured motorists or underinsured motorists, what that basically covers is if you get into an accident and you get injured by somebody who doesn't have insurance, your carrier will pay up to those limits. Likewise, personal injury protection is a no-fault benefit, which means if you get into an accident, it doesn't matter if you're at fault, the other party's at fault, or if they can't determine who is at fault, both are at fault. Regardless, that's what it's going to pay out. $50,000 is what is required in New York State. Another asset of the policy, which is part of state minimum limits and part of any New York State policy, is that if you travel to another state, your limits will automatically increase to that state's limits. So if you were to go to a state like California, which has lower minimum limits than New York, your limits stay the same. You're staying where they are. However, if you're to travel to, say, Michigan, whose limits are, as last I checked, 50, 110, your limits increase to that Michigan limit. There are other states, that's just one I'm using as an example. Not all states require personal injury protection or uninsured motorist coverage. New York State does. Part of the reason why insurance is more expensive in other states is because they do have those other extras included. And believe it or not, New York State is a little higher than average on what they require. So the minimum is not really what's good for most people. You want to have higher insurance limits, and oftentimes they don't cost too much more. But if you're just looking for what is the basic amount, that's what you're required to have.